What's going on, guys? We have to talk about Cleanspark. So they announced potential for dilution. This is definitely bringing a sell-off. We're also going to talk about their mining update. And let's not waste any time. So I have the August mining update, the July mining update, but let's look over these numbers, do a little comparison. So first off, August versus July, we did see a decrease in Bitcoin mined. Their month-end operating hash rate did, however, grow, which was to be expected. We are now sitting at 22.6 exahash per second, whereas the July update, we were at 21.2 exahash per second. We'll go into why it grew. Their deployed fleet grew. That's part of why, obviously. They increased about 3,000 Bitcoin miners, give or take. One cool thing is their fleet efficiency has come down, which is a positive. Their efficiency now is 22.7 joules per terahash, whereas it was 22.89 joules per terahash. This should continue coming down as well. And they talk about this in the call, how they are upgrading their machines, and this, as a side note, is why they didn't post a profit. They took a material loss for the upgrading of their machines, but basically they're going to be getting their joules per terahash under 20, and this is going to help a lot in terms of cost of Bitcoin mined. You'll see that over both months they did basically hold the vast majority of their Bitcoin. They sold 2.5 in August, whereas they sold 2.54 in July. They're now holding 7,558 Bitcoin. At this rate, they'll be very close to 10,000 Bitcoin by the end of this year, probably more closer to 9,500. We also have some good news moving forwards. We do have 65 megawatts of data center capacity expected to come online in September. That should increase their hash rate, increase the number of machines going and such. Now let's see what Zach Bradford says. As we approach the end of our fiscal year, the team continues to work diligently to optimize fleet efficiency and increase hash rate. Our fleet upgrade is well underway as we simultaneously prepare for 65 megawatts of capacity to be energized during the month of September. These efforts are expected to result in a meaningful increase of operating hash rate and Bitcoin production as we close out our fiscal year. We also have an update on Dalton. 15 megawatts of additional data center capacity is expected to be energized and fully hashing by next week. Sandersville. 50 megawatts of additional data center capacity expected to be energized and fully hashing by next month. Wyoming, the initial 30 megawatts of immersion cooled facility is progressing as planned. The company is also overseeing the preparation of the second site and expects to complete the closing of the land purchase upon completion of remaining closing conditions. Power agreements for the sites totaling 75 megawatts of power were executed in July. And we do have an update for Grid. The company is currently utilizing approximately 50 megawatts of infrastructure under a hosting agreement, which will be owned upon completion of the acquisition of Grid infrastructure. 80 megawatts of additional data center capacity is also under construction by Grid, which will also be owned upon completion of the sites and the closing of the acquisition. So they do have a lot of hash rate increasing in a very short time. Now I'll try to leave this down below for you guys as well, along with the mining update, but we do have some potential dilution. Now let me show you something from last cycle. Let me show you guys. If you remember last cycle, let me know down below. If you remember the dilution news last cycle, let me know down below. If you remember what Cleanspark's price did during that cycle, let me know down below. Cleanspark was the most dilutive Bitcoin miner last cycle. What did that change about them? What did that bring to the company? Did that bring lower and lower and lower prices? Did that mean the failure of that company? Did they get into bankruptcy like some others? Did they basically fall off a cliff like many others? No. They were able to grow, compete, and catch up to the likes of Riot and Mara. They have passed Riot in market cap, and this news will bring them closer and closer to Marathon. Cleanspark was the most dilutive miner, and that only further concreted, basically guaranteed, their success. It's either dilution or acquiring high interest rate debt. And while looking at it short term, of course, dilution sucks. If you're looking at this short term and just wanted to swing trade it or just do a few day trade, you're likely screwed with that hope. If you're looking at this company long term, this is going to help them increase their hash rate. This is going to help them stay afloat through any potential unprofitable quarters. This is going to help them catch up even closer to Marathon. Despite all that dilution last cycle, what did we see Cleanspark do? Well, in the beginning of the cycle, it was basically a 90-cent stock. By the halving, it was like $1.50 or so stock. By the end of the cycle, we're talking in the 40s. Despite all that dilution, despite that saturation of shares, Cleanspark's price still absolutely rallied. Cleanspark as a company was even more solidified because of it. If it wasn't for that dilution, they would not be where they are today. They would not be in the 20s in terms of exahash. And remember, back in 2020, Mara, Riot, many others, they were already deep in the Bitcoin mining space. Cleanspark was just starting out at that point. So long story short, dilution sucks, but if it's going to a company that knows what to do with it, that can utilize it the correct way, that can provide value for shareholders because of it, those additional shares, diluted into the company, bringing that share price down. While it sucks short term, you have to look long term. Is Cleanspark ever going to go bankrupt? Is Cleanspark ever going to fail? Now they're going to have all this new access to capital. They already have a decent amount of money, a decent amount of Bitcoin balance, very little to no debt. Could this mean a potential acquisition down the road? Could they be planning something here? It's very possible. Chart-wise, I definitely expect more sell-off. It wouldn't be surprising. We are at a new low we haven't seen since back in like February. Can we fill this gap in the 7s? Well, that's up to the market to decide. Will you be buying if we do get there? That's a question you need to ask yourself. But yeah, chart definitely looks ugly. Seeing new lows we haven't seen in months and months is not a good sign. Cleanspark is, however, getting to oversold on the daily. Doesn't mean it can't sell off more. So basically at this point, you're not looking at it from a chart perspective. You're looking at it as a company perspective. Do you want in on this company for the rest of this cycle? Then now's the time to buy. Now's the time to be loading up while there's bad news. If you're looking to play this on a week, 2-week trade, I wouldn't enter yet. I would be waiting. Let this bottom out first. Let this find a floor. This dilution news was recently announced. It'll probably take a little while for the market to digest it, decide where they want to bring the stock before we start seeing some sort of recovery. For now, we might just continue selling off. For now, we might continue selling off until we get to that gap fill. Does this change my view on Cleanspark over the rest of the cycle? Not one bit. And I wasn't worried about this company in terms of their survival, but this dilution news makes me even more confident that they're not going to fail. If you are looking to scoop up some cheap Cleanspark, you definitely want to keep an eye on it over the rest of September. General consensus with the market is that September sucks for Bitcoin. If this is a halving year, that's not the case actually. 2/3 of the time, Bitcoin has done good in a September on a halving year. So I'd say that the odds are in our favor, being that this is a halving year. Being that we saw a rough August, and based on the news surrounding right now, based on where Mt. Gox is with selling, based on where Celsius is, based on FTX, they are going to be paying out their customers in cash. Some of those customers might enter Bitcoin, crypto. But you know, September could be a great month to load up on Cleanspark if we do continue to sell off, as the market digests this dilution news. If you're worried about this dilution news and you think Cleanspark will not rally now, it's just over now, the cycle is done, Cleanspark has no hope, that's just too much dilution. Well, Cleanspark was the most dilutive Bitcoin miner last cycle, and it still did more than a 20x from after the halving. If we're talking about before the halving, it's more like a 40 to 50x. But, you know, from after the halving, from right around this time, Cleanspark still did multiples from here to the end of that cycle with all the dilution that they had. I don't think this cycle will be any different. And when we look back, the 2020 cycle dilution brought Cleanspark where they are today. What will this dilution do? Will this dilution bring them to pass Marathon? This cycle? Possibly. Moral of the story, there's definitely going to be dilution among these Bitcoin miners. They are going to run up, they are going to pull back, there are going to be huge fluctuations in price, and we will see this from the other Bitcoin miners too. As they run up in price, we will hear of dilution news from the others as well. The smartest Bitcoin miners will dilute. The ones that want to get passed on by the others won't dilute. Moral of the story, dilution does suck if you're looking short term, if you don't actually care about the company, if you just want to see the stock price go up. But if you're looking at the company, if you see the company over 5 years, 10 years, so on and so forth, you're okay with some dilution, knowing that it will continue to help the company grow. It will continue to help the company on their journey to being the best in their class. But let me know what you guys think about this dilution news. If you lived through the last cycle, you remember all those announcements of dilution. What were you doing back then? Were you panicking on the dilution news, or were you scooping it up? And if you were scooping it up on that dilution news, how'd that work out for you? And also, how are you feeling about Cleanspark's Bitcoin mining update? I'm very happy to see them continuing to hodl. This is definitely, in my opinion, the time to do so. I think the miners that are selling here are making a big mistake. I know for some that's just their strategy, but regardless, you know, it is what it is. I think the miners that are holding right now are going to benefit the most. But thanks as always for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one.